Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Port Richards Cafe, TechSense Senior Residential Care Homes, ATD Painting, and Performance Food Group. Port Richards Cafe, Plano's oldest restaurant since 1973. They are open daily from 5:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., serving the three most important meals of the day: breakfast, lunch, and dessert. It is true Texas home-style cooking made with love and grit. That is Port Richards Cafe, located off of Avenue K in Plano. TechSense Senior Residential Care Homes, senior care at its best with a family atmosphere. They specialize in making their facilities as close to a home living experience as possible. Not only that, there are no move-in fees and there are no visitation restrictions. They are located near I-635 in Marsh Lane in Dallas, right near Carrollton. For more information, you can call 469-400-7650. That is TechSense Senior Residential Care Homes. And now, let's podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the sports editor at Star Local Media, and I am being joined by Taylor Ragland and Brian Murphy. On today's podcast, we're going to, bid adieu to 2018 with our last football podcast of the year. It's been a great season, and as such, as has been the case for quite a while now, we always close down football season by assembling what has, at least in previous years, been our all-Collin County football team, where we recognize these standout football players from, the Plano area, Malin, McKinney, so forth, all of our schools that fall within Collin County. Well, this year, for the first time ever, we are blowing that up and letting everybody in on the fun. We are going to be unveiling our first ever all-area football team, so all of the public schools under the Star Local Media coverage umbrella are going to be recognized. We're in the process of assembling the first ever all-area team. That's going to be released later on in January. But as we did last year, after football season, in anticipation of the release of the all-county team, we came up with some cutting room floor superlative awards. Now, for the actual all-area team, we have our six superlatives that we've had for years with the all-county teams. Your typical ones, like your MVP, Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, and then we have a couple more off the beaten path ones, Utility Player of the Year and Assistant Coach of the Year. So we had a few, though, that, you could make a case should have warranted a spot on there for a superlative, but they just fell through the cracks onto the cutting room floor, so we're going to pick them back up and we're going to discuss them for this podcast. So we're going to have the entire staff's going to participate in this. Mm-hmm. We've got three categories for this. Three superlatives that just missed the cut: Newcomer of the Year, Performance of the Year, and Game of the Year. We had some fun with this idea last year, so we're going to bring it back, close out 2018 in style, and yeah, gentlemen, let's get rolling. Let's talk Newcomer of the Year, a popular superlative on any all-district list. Just missed the cut for our all-area team. So nevertheless, let's talk a bit about some of the more promising newcomers that we saw this season. Brian, give me your Newcomer of the Year.
Logan Point at running back. He wasn't the full-time starter last year.
Salina, we should say.
Salina running back, giving Salina some love, giving the Bobcats some love there. He kind of emerged at the end of his sophomore season and was like, man, who is this kid? This kid's a beast. And then he just got even stronger and stronger and stronger in the offseason going into his junior year. This past fall, he was going to be the guy. And boy, he took off. He took over that role. He was, this unquestioned MVP of that offense, no doubt about it. He ran for over 1,600 yards, had 22 rushing touchdowns. He had 3 more receiving touchdowns, and he missed a game in the regular season. And he also was rested much of the game against Anna. So that's without 2 more games there, or a game and a half. Yeah. His stats are just ridiculous. He's a monster. He's going to have a terrific senior season next season.
I actually had a running back as well for my Newcomer of the Year selection, and this one was out at Plano Senior High. Tylen Hines. Coming into this season, you knew that Plano was going to have a strong running game. I mean, we've seen for years what Kyron Cumbie's been able to do as the fulcrum for that rushing attack, plus Cody Christ. And then they add this third element. Tylen Hines in his first year with Plano, just a sophomore, and you think of what has made Kyron Cumbie stand out over the years, and that's his ability to go to the house on any given play, just his big play, game-breaking ability. Well, imagine a sophomore version of Kyron Cumbie in the same offense, and that's what Tylen Hines was. He had 75 carries on the season for 779 yards, so 10.4 yards per carry, 11 total touchdowns. He was banged up a little bit midway through the season, but really came on strong down the stretch. He had 248 rushing yards against Jesuit, 131 the following week against McKinney Boyd. Was really really helped kind of really contributed big to that surge that Plano made late in the season to put them just within earshot of getting a playoff berth. It's obviously lays Plano's had a pretty impressive lineage of running backs, I should say, dating all the way back to the late 2000s with Rex Burkhead, current New England Patriot, and then guys like Brandon Stevens, these past few years, and then Kyron Cumby, and now it seems like the torch will be passed now to Talon Hines to be the bell cow of that backfield next season. And you see what he was capable of this year, very much a sophomore year, very comparable to what Kyron Cumby showed. And if that's what's in store for Plano, then their running game is not going anywhere.
Nope.
So that was my pick for Newcomer of the Year. Taylor, where'd you land on this one?
I'll go to the other side of the ball, since you guys both had offensive players. It was a weird year for me. I covered a lot of senior-heavy teams. Yeah. The Plano East and Plano West are typically that way, being in the top 4 biggest schools in the state, but Lovejoy and Lake Dallas were both also very senior-heavy. So not a lot of real impactful. You think freshman, sophomore when you think newcomer mostly. Some juniors. But I'll go R.W. Rucker from Lovejoy because, he really burst on the scene in that secondary for Lovejoy. 90 tackles, 5 interceptions, a fumble recovery, a forced fumble, and then I think 4 or 5 pass breakups. So, just a really impactful year from a young guy and playing a lot of, that was a district that we talked about at the beginning of the year as being, kind of the district of the quarterback. You think of, Josh Foskey, you think of Ryan Depperschmidt, Carson Collins himself for Lovejoy. Yep. Even Denison, I can't remember the kid's name off the top of my head, but their young quarterback is very promising. So a lot of good offensive play in that district. So he was up for Newcomer of the Year. I don't think he won. He came a couple votes shy. Ended up all the way down on the second team, I think, but really deserving of the nods that he got and the recognition and the votes that he did get, because I think he had a really good year in that secondary for what was a pretty good Lovejoy defense at times. It was a little bit, it was a little bit lost and trying to find its way at times without Bumper Pool. Who wouldn't be? But, Rucker and company, Coleman Christensen and some of those other defensive players for Lovejoy had a pretty good season, and he led the way, I think.
Let's talk performance of the year, and we can go a bunch of different directions with this one. It can either be an individual one, it can be a team-wide one, all sorts of different options for our performance of the year selections. Brian, where did you land on this one?
I was hoping you'd call my name because a nice little segue. Yeah. Speaking of the Lovejoy defense, they played fairly well most of the year, but there was one game where they kind of laid an egg, and that was against Frisco Reedy. They gave up 562 total yards of offense. It wasn't just one guy. It wasn't just Josh Foskey. It was the whole Lions team was feasting against the Leopards, and the Lovejoy offense kind of laid an egg also. 3 first downs, 84 total yards, held scoreless. Going into that game, it was like, man, this is going to be a high-scoring blowout, or not blowout, high-scoring shootout, I should say. And man, it was the furthest thing from it. That was the win that Reedy notched under its belt. That was like, hey, all right, this team is more than just legit. This team
did that to quite a few people this year, I would say, starting with Plano West, another one of my schools. Reedy was a force.
Yeah, that was no doubt about it.
Because weren't they both undefeated heading into that game, or did Lovejoy have a loss on its record?
I think they might have been, but Lovejoy, it was always
Lovejoy
really
had
up
one
in the
less
air.
game because they had
the Sulphur Springs game. Yeah,
I think they were undefeated, but it was really up in the air because they played like the Frisco schools. Yeah, they hadn't really. This was like the big test, and we all I think took Reedy, but we expected it to be 42-28.
Nobody could have foreseen 51-0 coming.
Yeah, that was something.
Taylor, where did you land on your performance of the year?
Well, I'm going to give mine to Plano East senior quarterback Brandon Mallory. Twofold. I'll go with his overall body of work. The area's leading passer for pretty much all of the year. Finished with over 3,200 yards passing. Wow. 201 for 328, 36 touchdowns to 8 picks. And I think those 8 picks a lot of times are also just high volume picks because sometimes quarterbacks in a little bit lower volume passing games are a little bit more efficient. They're not taking as many chances. So he made some bad decisions, but I think you look 36-8, that could have even been a little lower.
Weren't 3 of those picks against Plano?
And they just throw the ball so much too. So it's tough to gauge that sometimes. But so he gets performance of the year not only for his entire body of work, but then I look at the Dallas Jesuit game. Really the one everybody thought they were going to get in the playoffs, but it wasn't. For sure they needed to go out.
Work for that one.
Yeah, they needed to go out and win win that game, and it ended up being a tighter game than I think some people thought. But Mallory, in that win that helped clinch the playoffs, was 16 for 20, 323 yards, 5 touchdowns, and no picks. So I think his most prolific numbers-wise game of the year, and really indicative of what that guy could do, especially, the Jesuit defense wasn't super great all year, so if you give him the time and the space to make his decisions, that guy's got an arm that I think could translate to the next level, and he had a great year to prove it.
For mine, kind of like you, Brian, I went with a more team-wide one. Not so much team, but I guess a unit, I should say. And this was Plano Senior's offense in their performance in their second game of the season, all the way back on like September 7th, I want to say, against El Paso Eastwood. Their first ever meeting with Eastwood. A game that had a lot of just because of the uniqueness of a team from El Paso making the trip to to the Metroplex to play Plano, just some intrigue on just how that would fare, and it turned out being just a wild, fun, and crazy game. Yeah. The final score in this one was 72-48. This was Plano's highest scoring performance since 1939.
Yikes!
Their 4th highest scoring performance all time, and you think this is a program that dates back to the the early 1900s. They had and it was so unique in how that it materialized too. So Plano finished with 414 yards of offense in this game, and they did so on just 25 offensive snaps.
Wow. Yeah. I remember you coming in the next day, and that was literally the first thing. Like, I sat down on my desk, and you're like, listen to this. Like, listen to this stat.
They were outsnapped in this game 105-25 by Eastwood, and they still rolled up over 400 yards of offense. Through 3 quarters, that offense was averaging 15.9 yards per play.
Wow.
And the capper to it all, they didn't score in the first quarter. Plano was scoreless in the first quarter of that game and still wound up with 72 by the end. They had a couple defensive touchdowns mixed in, but after that scoreless first quarter, the offense just caught fire. They scored on 9 consecutive possessions, 5 total one-play touchdown drives in this game. I went just through the second quarter. They had 33 points alone in the second quarter. They had 8 snaps, okay? Here's how those 8 snaps went. Run, pass, touchdown, touchdown, run, touchdown, touchdown.
Wow.
And you had a pick 6 mixed in as well.
What happened on those other 4? Why didn't they call the touchdown play?
I know, it was, so yes, 4 of your 8 plays in a single quarter result in touchdowns. It was, and then you had on defense, you had Scott Albrecht, who had I believe he had 3 interceptions, 2 of which resulted in pick 6s. So you had a very unique defensive individual performance for Plano as well. Just a wild game against Eastwood where, the defense, they still gave up 48 points because the defense was so gassed because they were on the field for so long, and the offense, they kept on scoring. They scored it seemingly at will, and it was, it was such a weird game to watch firsthand, all that unfold. Just a game that still to this day is I'm probably not going to be forgetting that game anytime soon. Just one of the more unique games I've ever seen. As far as but it wasn't the best game that I saw. That one, and I'll lead off our game of the year superlative. That one belonged to Allen against Duncanville. Sorry, Eagles. I'm gonna make y'all drudge up this memory one last time. The Class 6A Division I state semifinals. Duncanville defeats Allen 44-35 in a game that obviously had a ton of hype going in. Naturally, with both teams being undefeated, Allen being the team du jour in Texas high school football for the last 6, 7, 8 years and whatnot, and a chance for Duncanville to notch one of the big wins in its program's history. Probably in hindsight, with the exception of maybe the state title win in 1998, maybe the biggest win in the program's history since then. And this game lived up to the hype and then some. If you guys don't remember how it happened, Allen was down 21 points at the half. Duncanville just showcasing they're the big plays that they racked off on the ground. You just don't see teams roll up, gains like that. They had a 90-yard touchdown on one play. They started off the game with I believe it was a 73-yard touchdown. You just don't see Allen get hit with those kinds of runs. And it put Allen in uncharted waters, being down 35-14 at the half. Allen then goes on to tie the game up in the third quarter alone with 21 unanswered points on a Duncanville defense that hadn't allowed a single point in the third quarter all season. And even then, in the state title game, North Shore didn't score on them in the third quarter. So Allen was the only team to score on Duncanville in the third quarter, and they did so 3 times. Just how improbable that stat sounds now in hindsight. So they tied it up 35-35. Allen couldn't get get over the hump, though. They had a couple shots at that go-ahead drive, couldn't materialize, and then Duncanville finally took the lead with about 3:02 left in the game on a 40-yard touchdown run by Jaquindon Jackson on 4th down, no less, to retake the lead for Duncanville 42-35. 2 plays into Allen's following series, they get a safety, and for the 9-point lead by Duncanville, and that was all she wrote. So in hindsight, some impressive resilience by Allen to make that comeback. Impressive resilience then by Duncanville to withstand that and still find a way to win, because Duncanville hadn't been pushed like that at all up to that point. So you think a lot of teams might crack under that a scenario like that, where you have just the Allen barrage in the second half. And fair play to Duncanville for the job that they did pulling that one out. Unfortunately, with the way the following week ended for them, that was a tough one against North Shore, but nevertheless a thriller of a game against Allen. And, my pick at the very least, at least among the public schools. Now, if we're factoring in private schools, that Prestonwood St. Pius rematch in September, that also is right on there in terms of just sheer entertainment value. But if we're just factoring in the UIL programs, Allen Duncanville state semifinals gets my pick. Brian, what was your game of the year?
It's no surprise what my pick is. the hook and ladder game between the Colony and Frisco Lone Star. Both teams were 3-0 heading into this game. Middle of district play, middle of October. We had this game highlighted when we talked about our teams before the season. We were like, man, the district's going to come down to that game, and something had to give going into that game. Much like every other Lone Star game this year, it was a defensive battle. They contained the Colony, something that no team could do throughout the regular season. They limited Miles Price, they limited Keith Miller, they limited Mikey Harrington until the very last play of the game. And right before that, Julian Larry had connected with Marvin Mims for the game-tying touchdown with 1:52 to go, a 57-yarder. The Lone Star offense wasn't doing anything up until that point. They had scored in the first quarter. They got the touchdown in the first quarter. They didn't do anything. They didn't score. They didn't find the end zone again until the fourth, with 1:52 left, and it was like, wow, okay, we might be heading to overtime. That's what it's looking like. 4th and long, 60 yards away, almost 60 yards away for the Colony. This one's over. I'm recording just in case, crazy things can happen, and the craziest thing did happen. Harrington throws a pass across the middle to Keith Miller, and then a few seconds later, he runs across the middle, flicks it back to Miles Price, one of the most electrifying players in the state, and he just scampers down the sideline untouched, and everyone just went nuts, and my jaw hit the floor. I couldn't believe it, and there was no flags, and the Colony went nuts, and they went on to win the district title.
First time you'd ever seen a hook and ladder in person?
Oh yeah, that's the first time I've seen one since OU Boise State.
Especially successful.
Yeah.
It's one thing to see it, but they usually just go completely awry somewhere in the middle.
You usually see it, and then they'll try all these things, and they'll fumble it, and the game's over. And it just
everything
goes
has to
nowhere.
be perfect. And watching that video of your play, like everything was perfect. Like the pitch to Price was so on the money. He never even broke stride. It was just all like the stars aligned.
And Coach Rangel told me after the game they were practicing that play, and they knew they were going to have to whip that play out at some point against Lone Star, because that Lone Star defense up to that point hadn't given up more than 21 points, even against Highland Park. They allowed just 10 points to Highland Park a few weeks before. And so Rangel knew they had to pull out all the stops.
Was it specifically called something like Bronco?
It was called Bronco.
Yes.
Bronco. Named after Boise State.
Matt twitches every time we say it.
Wow, that's a very, very worthy selection. Yes, not only just game of the year, but perhaps the play of the year in Texas high school football. Right?
Well, after the
Hail Mary against North Shore and Duncanville, obviously that notwithstanding. Taylor, what was your pick for game of the year?
Well, like my newcomer of the year, I didn't see a whole lot of barn burners this year, but I know it was a weird year in my neck of the woods. But I did see one pretty interesting game between Lovejoy and Lake Dallas. It was interesting in the fact that basically one team played the first half and one team played the second half, and that team in the first half was Lovejoy. They got up to a 28-0 lead, and I had almost written the game off at that point. I know how prolific Ryan Deppersmith's career was at Lake Dallas, how explosive they can be, but at the same time, it was 28-0. There was little resistance from Lake Dallas. It seemed like 28-0 was the beginning, and we were on our way to 35-0 to 42-0. Like it seemed over, and then all of a sudden, they start to charge back a little bit. And at the half, it was 31-14, I believe. So they charged back a little bit, but still, the game's a little out of the reach. And then the Lovejoy offense just shut down. They didn't score in the second half. They hardly did anything in the second half. And Lake Dallas, by the time it was all said and done, after being down 28-0, Lake Dallas went on a 27-3 run. But if you do the math, that means they lose 31-27. So it was one of the wackiest, just swingiest games I've seen in a long time, and it really didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it was entertaining, especially right at the very end. Lake Dallas lined up, I think, at the Lovejoy 18 or 20 or somewhere around there with like 4 seconds left on the clock. Obviously need a touchdown to win the football game, and came close.
Yeah.
But it wasn't to be. Sean Sumner's sacked Ryan Deberschmidt, and that was the end. Lovejoy went crazy. So it ended up being a lot more entertaining than it looked like it would be at 28-0. But also very strange. So I guess for all of those aspects combined, I'll give it my game of the year.
And those are our picks, at least, for a few of the all-area cutting room floor superlatives. But we've got the rest of the staff: Justin Thomas, Kendrick Johnson, Devin Hassan, going to come on in a second, give their picks for the aforementioned superlatives, and we will see what they had to say after a word from the sponsor. Let's take a quick break to talk about ATD Painting. Whether it's painting, staining, carpentry, residential, commercial, interior, exterior, ATD Painting has you covered. They have 4 locations in the Metroplex, including Plano and Louisville. You can call 972-694-8888 for more information, or you can visit their website at atdpainting.com. That is ATD Painting. Check it out to see just how affordable professional painting can be. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
Well, welcome back. We've switched up the lines and rotations here. So Justin Thomas, Denton County Sports reporter, and I'm being joined by our McKinney guy, Kendrick Johnson, and our Mesquite reporter, Devin Hassan. So guys, we're finishing up the Cutting Room Floor Awards, looking at some of the games, performances, and some of the top newcomers we covered on the gridiron this season. So how about Kendrick? Any game kind of jump out to you that you covered this year that kind of leaves no doubt as to what was the most entertaining?
Just from an emotional standpoint, I gotta give it to the Crosstown Showdown. McKinney hadn't won in 9 years. They desperately wanted to win, had to win to get into the playoffs. So they beat Boyd for the first time in 9 years and get in the playoffs the first time at MISD Stadium. So it was a very dramatic conclusion, in which ended up being the last game for Don Drake. So that game had a lot of crossroads and like a pretty big celebration afterwards. They took a big, I don't know if you've been to MISD Stadium. They had this grass thing in one end zone. They posted about the McKinney logo under the big jumbotron.
Yeah.
And took this now famous picture.
Devin, anything jump out to you?
And typically we try to, I guess, when we pick a game of the year, you talk about one of your teams that you cover in one of their highlights. Mine is actually a game that was a loss for one of my schools, and that was John Tyler against Poteet. John Tyler wins 48-44. Just an incredible back and forth game. John Tyler jumps out 21-0 in the first quarter. Poteet starts to battle back. They finally get over the hump, and you think this is going to be this incredible finish for Poteet as Seth McGowan scores with 15 seconds left. 15 seconds left to take a 44-41 lead, but that was enough time for John Tyler. Devlin Woods to Keandre Street, that was a connection that Poteet could not stop all game long. They hit for 3 earlier touchdowns, and the 4th one was the dagger. 1 second left on the clock, and they throw the Hail Mary, and Keandre Street jumps up between 3 Poteet defenders, pulls it down. Just a really, really good game between 2 very high-quality teams. I mean, Poteet lost narrowly in the first round to a very good College Station team that was a defending state champion, who would go on to lose to Highland Park the following week in another close game. And then John Tyler is going to be kicking himself all off-season for blowing that 3-touchdown lead against Highland Park in the quarterfinals in a game that they had every right to believe that they should have won. And obviously Highland Park goes on and wins its 3rd straight championship, and John Tyler is left wondering, it could have been us. So, but great game. How about you?
I almost picked one of your markets, actually. Obviously, the first game of the year, that Coppell-Saxe game was pretty thrilling, and of course, with the backstory of Caden Davis missing the extra point in overtime a year ago, and then coming back in the very first game of the year and hitting a 57-yard field goal. But actually, that is not my choice. I'm gonna
Tease.
Yeah, tease. Yeah, you know me. I have a tough time picking one thing. I'm gonna actually pick the Flower Mound Louisville game, the District 6-6A opener. Just looking back on what the importance of that game and everything, it ended up being the de facto championship game in the district. It was a game Louisville led by 20 points with three. They scored a touchdown with 3 minutes left in the third quarter to go up 20. And then Flower Mound really just kind of roars back, comes all the way back and wins that game. Couple special teams snafus by Louisville that kind of helped Flower Mound. And I guess the other cool thing that looking back at that game is Blake Short, the Flower Mound quarterback, would end up being the district offensive player of the year. He actually didn't start that game. They started with their offense. They were coming off a hard-fought, big loss against Prosper, so they actually went with Jake Welch at quarterback for the first half, just trying to give a little more running element to the position. Short actually comes back under center after halftime, leads a touchdown drive on the first drive. You can see kind of the enthusiasm picking up, and ends up leading that big comeback in the fourth quarter, and then, as I said, just carried that momentum all the way to Offensive Player of the Year honors that year. So that was a real fun one. Ended up being the determining the district champion. Flower Mound ended up undefeated. Louisville had just that one loss. So
and who would have thought that back then?
Yeah, exactly. I know. So that's my choice for the best game that I covered. Performance of the year. I'm going to stick with Flower Mound actually, and they're going to go with their whole offense in their Mound Showdown game against Marcus. The reason I say the whole offense, how many times have you guys covered a game in which the quarterback threw for 300 yards and the running back ran for 300 yards? That's pretty rare rare for me. Pierce Hudgens actually, by my count, had 1 yard shy. He had 299 yards, but he did have a 16-yard catch. So he had 300 total yards of offense, but 299 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. Blake Short throws for 324 yards and 2 touchdowns, and they beat Marcus 59-21. That's their most lopsided win in the series, the most points they've ever scored in the series. They finished with almost 700 yards of offense as a team. And like I said, quarterback and a running back both going for 300 yards, pretty rare. So I went with the Flower Mound offense and their Mound Showdown win over the Marauders.
I was going to say, that was kind of a statement. Cause
I would say so too.
Me personally, and I know it's just one person, I kept waiting for Flower Mound to come back down to earth.
Yeah, I think I might have actually picked Marcus in that game, actually.
And they kept winning, but that was the game you thought, the rivalry game. This is when they actually do come crashing back down, and I thought that, like you say, was one of their best performances of the season.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Devin?
I went. I turned to the first round of the playoffs. Jermaine Givens over at Horn. Last season, he was the district most valuable player. Just put up video game-like numbers during Horn's slow start. His kind of stats reflected that he wasn't able to put up the same kind of numbers stat-wise that he did a year ago. But he saved his best for last. Horn comes in with a 3-7 record against a Temple team that was the runner-up and a very good 12-6A against Waco Midway, and. Jermaine Givens, 20 of 26 for 293 yards and 3 touchdowns, 17 carries for 211 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
More than 500 yards of total offense, which is the kind of performance he was putting together a year ago on his way to MVP honors. But he saved that for the right time. He throws a 38-yard touchdown pass to Nikausi Emery with just 11 seconds left. That proves to be the game winner as Horn kind of pulls the upset in the minds of many on their way to the regional semifinals after that 0-7 start. But Jermaine Givens is a capable player. Is capable of those types of performances, but he saved it for the right time this past season.
Kendrick, who really dropped your jaw this year? Who stood out?
Mine's wasn't even it was a team.
Yeah.
McKinney North scored 90 points.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
It beat Wiley East, and 48 of them came in the second quarter.
Yeah, they didn't score in the first quarter, right?
It was 48-0 at halftime. They had 6 people score touchdowns. They had
90 points in 3 quarters.
They had 4 people score more than 1 touchdown. And they had 3 rushers go over 140 yards.
That's awesome.
So I gotta give it as a team thing for them, because you won't see that again.
So what was their team rushing stats? They had 8 rushing touchdowns and 500 yards? That's crazy.
They ran for 460. They passed for 205.
Yeah.
Quarterback Dylan Marcos was 11-13 for 4 tubs.
Yeah, that's quite the offensive performance, I would say. How about
they called the dogs off.
Yeah. Well, And I can't believe they didn't score in the first quarter. That's crazy. How about for Newcomer of the Year? Anybody stand out in your markets there?
Newcomer of the Year. It's kind of debatable. If I was going to give a Newcomer of the Year, I'd give it to Manny Fincher from McKinney North. He had a very solid season. He ran for 800 yards total. Had a good overall year. He spent time with Hunter Shea, and I expected big things out of him. For some reason, North always finds somebody that could be a 1,000-yard rusher. Yeah. This year it was Hunter Shea. Next year, barring injury, it will be Manny Fincher, and he has potential to go for 2,000.
For me, I'm going to take Coppell freshman linebacker Walker Polk. He was named the district's Newcomer of the Year, and for good reason. Stepped right in for the Cowboys. Had as a freshman linebacker, playing in that district against, some of those offensive linemen and the size that district has. And as a freshman, all he did was put up 116 tackles, 7 for a loss, forced a fumble, had a couple sacks. So dynamic debut season for Polk, and I'm guessing you're going to see a lot more 100-plus tackle seasons from him coming down the way. Kind of reminds me a lot of what we saw from Connor Lee at Flower Mound here a couple of years ago, and everybody knows the career he ended up having.
I meant to add, I just looked at Fincher stats, 932 for 13 tubs. You split carries as a sophomore.
Yeah. I guess he's going to be the next North bell cow there. Yeah. Devin, how about you?
I'm going to go with Jaden Brown, the linebacker over at Mesquite. Seeing Mesquite a couple times, even early on this season, it's just, there's some guys that just kind of jump off the field, as you're watching the press box, and you're trying to keep track, and they seem to be in on every tackle. And Jaden Brown was one of those kids, just a sophomore, like I say, but he finishes with 114 tackles, 2 for loss, couple sacks, but just just having a nose for the football, for that middle linebacker position, and just really impressive for a sophomore. And like you said, more 100 tackle seasons on the way. I expect the same thing from Jaden Brown.
All right, anything else, guys?
It's bittersweet.
Yeah,
we no more football podcasts.
More football,
on a personal note, I was at the North Shore Duncanville game on the sideline. I'm like on Texas football. Like you see me just chilling. So it's not the best game of all time
for the chaos there.
Shout out to North Shore, number 1 team in the nation.
So that'll about do it. As you alluded, Devin, we'll be back later this week. Our podcast will start focusing more on soccer as we move into the second semester here and into more of these basketball, excuse me. Soccer is coming too. It did start this week, actually.
Flower Mound McKinney School is about to be putting in some work on that soccer field.
But yeah, we'll be hitting on girls basketball later this week, and as we get going here with the second semester in 2019. So thanks you guys for joining us.
Thanks for checking out this edition of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast, brought to you by Performance Food Group. They deliver more than 150,000 food and related products to customers all across the country. Their McKinney office is currently hiring Class A CDL drivers, order selectors, and many other entry and part-time positions. For more information, you can visit their website at pfgc.com/careers, or you can call 214-491-3130. That is Performance Food Group, located in McKinney at 500 Metro Park Drive.